Talking education, to joined by Antonia Giannovacci, correct?
Giovinazzi, yes.
Giovinazzi, the principal of the National Mathematics and Science College. It's a specialist STEM international sixth form college for gifted and talented students in the Coventry in the UK. And before that, she was a founding vice principal and head of secondary at Heartland International School here in Dubai. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back in Dubai.
You've been travelling like a crazy woman.
I have. I've been doing a bit of globe-trotting over the last 12 days, namely in China.
China to Dubai and then on to the UK.
And then back to the UK, yeah.
So as well as championing STEM education, you're also a really passionate advocate for the arts and you're a music performer as well as a spectator who studied cello under Charles Renaud, no less.
Yes.
It's really serious.
In France, yes. Well, there's a big connection, I think, between the science and music. I mean, in particular, I know we're running a project at the moment, excuse me, with music and maths and music and physics. And, you know, one of the courses we do is actually studying waves through music, through physics. So, you know, there's a big correlation, there's a big link up. So you could put the A in STEM, I suppose. And
STEAM.
we do actually do a bit of STEAM, yes.
So as you said, we're in China and now to Dubai and then heading back to Coventry. What was happening over in China?
Well, China are really interested in STEM. They want to promote it in their schools. They realise that the next big surges in innovation are going to come from people who have a STEM background, STEM education. The challenge for people in China and schools in China is the sheer volume in the classrooms. Some of the schools I went to had, 50, 60 students sitting in the class, literally. And if you factor...
And what age group would that be with that number of students?
These were... the classes I went in to do some workshops with, they were year 10 and 11. So you know the size of boys and girls at year 10 and 11, they're quite tall. And they were in rows. And they have a very didactic style of teaching. And you can see why, because actually, in a practical way, they cannot do group-based, inquiry-based learning, hands-on approach. And the interesting thing is we were talking to them about chemistry and biology and physics and how they incorporated practical elements into their lessons. They actually do have labs in a lot of the schools, but because of the number of students, they cannot actually carry out practical lessons.
So we'd be sitting in labs having theoretical lessons with all of the gear around them that they can't actually get involved in.
Yes, and so, we'd have students coming to us, for example, who couldn't light a Bunsen burner. And it's simply because they don't have the facility in certainly in the public schools in China, to do practical experimental-based learning.
And what's the obstacle then? Is it financial? Is it space? Is it number of teachers?
Well, I think it's a bit of all three, really. But if you factor in that a school in China will have up to 4,000 students, they just don't have the capacity in their teaching body to have smaller classes. And obviously there's a financial imperative as well. The international schools and the private schools are challenging this, and they're managing to have classes of about 15 to 20. And that's where you're seeing the innovation. That's where you're seeing the progress in learning. But a lot of the international schools are now partnering with the public schools to try and develop this kind of learning. And
can you tell me a little bit more about where your principal, the National Mathematics and Science Centre there in Coventry? We've had a message here from Joe saying, really great to hear Antonia back in Dubai. Loved her at Heartland. Are there any links between her college and the UAE?
Yes. Well, we're over here trying to build partnerships with schools and parents, not trying to take students from the UAE, but to say, look, if there are particular students who are already moving to the UK, or the families are thinking of moving to the UK at 16, come and have a look at us. If your child is mathematically and scientifically focused, if they are looking to study medicine, veterinary, engineering, maths, natural sciences, if they're targeting leading universities, Russell Group, Oxbridge, come and have a look at us because we're a niche specialist college. Everyone in the college is in the same mathematical and scientific learning environment. And we focus very much on preparing students for going on to those universities for those courses.
So as you said, it's a sixth form college there for gifted and talented students. And you're here going to be doing some scholarship applications while you're here. We're going to be talking later about what you look for in students to get those scholarships. But let's go really back to basics for those of us who aren't aware. Yeah. How do you define STEM education?
Well, STEM education, we know it stands for science, technology, engineering and maths. It's not a subject per se. What it is really a curriculum based on educating students in those four specific disciplines. And it's more than just the knowledge. It's more than having knowledge of maths and science. What it does is it combines, if you like, the 5 C's of what we like to call 21st century learning: collaboration, creativity, communication, critical thinking, and computational thinking. So algorithms, problem solving. And it's bringing all of those elements of learning together through the subjects. But it's also about actually blending the learning. And a lot of people talk about, oh, we do blended learning, we teach cross-curricular subjects. But it's really about getting to the heart of, something in biology and something in maths, sitting the teachers down together and actually giving them the time to plan together their subjects, because that's so much more powerful than teaching in isolation. Subjects in isolation.
And having that collaboration between departments, which is so
absolutely,
rare actually, because you might have a student kind of making the connection themselves, but that should really come from the staff side rather than the pupil side.
Well, it should be driven, exactly. But I think the challenge in many schools, and I know the challenge in Dubai schools, is actually having the time. So I think schools possibly need to be looking at making it one of their priorities in terms of their professional development.
And what kind of age do I know you're with sixth form college, but is STEM being introduced at a much earlier age now?
Yes. I mean, when I was in Dubai, for example, we had, am I allowed to say certain companies on air? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just bleep you out later. Yeah, of course, go for it.
I remember in the very first year of the school, we had engineering for kids who are based in Dubai who came to the school. We had robotics, and we had the little coding machines for the teeny tinies at FS. In fact, what's interesting is I think in Dubai, particularly, I've seen it really successfully implemented at FS. And FS, I think, is really powerful and really strong here. And you see that that's where the children are doing their inquiry-based learning. They're asking questions all the time. It's in-the-moment planning. And I think the challenge is to harness that and to keep that going through the schools.
Because it is something that children of that age naturally display.
They have a natural curiosity. They naturally make links between different subjects or different themes. They're asking the right searching questions. Unfortunately, what seems to happen is as they move through the primary school, the number of questions they ask it becomes reduced.
And the kind of questions as well.
Exactly.
I was looking at Boston Children's Museum. They've got a STEM Sprouts teaching guide, and it talks about building confidence and curiosity by asking what questions rather than why. So what did you try? What have you seen other people trying? What have you changed? What do you think will happen if we ...
Exactly. And it's trying to keep away from the why. Or the what question, and how, and why do you think, and what would happen if we did it differently? Children naturally ask those questions when they're very small. What is it?
I've got a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah, well,
Believe me, the questions are incessant, but you've got to try your best as a parent and as an educator to answer them as fully and honestly as possible, because
absolutely
you can't be shutting them down.
How often do you find yourself, though, saying at the end of a day, oh, stop asking questions, and I'm a mother and I've had small children, and I know you have to actually check yourself and say, stop asking them to stop asking questions.
Yeah. I think on average, the average 3-year-old asks about 400 questions a day.
Yeah.
I can well believe that. So what kind of careers are we looking at for students leaving your college, and what kind of results are they getting?
Well, the results in the last 2 years have been phenomenal. We've been really pleased because for us, it's really evidence that the style of learning that we're promoting is actually working. In maths, for example, in the last 2 years, we've had 100% A star to A at A level, which is phenomenal. We're very, very strong in maths, but it's not because they're learning the facts. It's because they really are learning in this, developmental, inquisitive and inquiring way.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Owen and Jamira saying there are lots of good schools here. Are Antonia's A-level results in her college even better than here? Maths, for example.
Well, as I've said...
Can you draw comparisons between Dubai and the UK in that sense?
I don't know the exact statistics. I know that, for instance, we are well above the national average. I think the national average for maths A-level, and somebody's going to phone in and quote me, say that I've got the wrong figure, but I think it's 67% A star to B. We had 100% A star to B, but actually it was 100% A star to A. At further maths, which is obviously the more advanced maths course, we were 83% A star to B. Physics, we were 83% A star to B. 80% chemistry. And I think our average across all the subjects was 90% A star to B. So, we're doing what we say on the tin, as it were, and they're managing to get these results.
Talking about STEM and education, if you've got any questions about STEM itself, about results or careers that you think your children could be interested in that could work alongside this teaching method, get in touch. 4001 on the SMS. You can message us, of course, for free using the Dubai Eye app. We are talking about STEM education this afternoon between now and 4 as Antonia joins us, the principal at the National Mathematics and Science College. It's a specialist STEM international sixth form college for gifted and talented students over in Coventry, UK. But before that, she was the founding vice principal and head of secondary at Heartland International here in Dubai. Question here from Zoe in Al Nada saying, what is the difference between STEM and STEAM?
Well, apart from just one letter difference, which is STEM is science, technology, engineering and maths, and STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. Now, in fact, although we're a STEM college, every college or school that teaches STEM should be incorporating the element of STEAM in it, and we do.
We've talked about what's been kind of popular and and how fantastic the results that you are seeing over there. But I'm kind of curious what careers STEM can lead to, because in my mind, and this is me coming from a creative background, I was all English literature and whatnot, I think of it being almost dry, that, you're going to be a maths teacher, you're going to be a scientist or an engineer. Is that the case, or is it actually a lot broader than that?
It's a lot broader than that, but I think, you're not wrong. Most people do think, oh, well, if I'm going to go into study maths and science and engineering, that's all I can become. Now, obviously, you have the traditional career paths of engineers and computer programmers, etc. But actually, it opens up a whole host of other career paths that people don't really think of or haven't thought about. If you take, for instance, journalism. Having an interest in maths, science and technology doesn't exclude your interest in writing and journalism. If you think about all the editorials that are needed for companies like Apple and Google, think about your mobile phones. Every time you have either a set of instructions or you have science and technology magazines, who is writing these articles? The people who are writing these articles are technology journalists who have to have a deep understanding of data, technology, innovation.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the most successful specialist journalists in the world have done a degree, certainly in something perhaps not related to journalism, then gone on to do a post-grad. So having that knowledge of something away from that writing and investigative is huge benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And another things I'm thinking about is architecture. You wouldn't naturally associate, well, obviously you would associate the maths with the architects, but architects now have a real moral obligation and often a legal obligation to comply with energy saving, not so much cost saving, but energy saving, sustainable buildings. It's very difficult now to get a building passed unless you have proved it is sustainable. A lot of the graduates who are coming out from STEM courses are going into sustainability, are looking at how to solve some of the challenges we have, and especially in the environmental challenges, the food shortages. There's a really good example of that. High on the agenda of everybody at the moment is, of course, plastic in the ocean, not using plastic bags, etc. And there are a couple of master's graduates from Imperial College London, and they set up a company. They came together, and this is where you see STEM in action, if you like. This is where you see that it actually works in the real life and it's applied.
What have they done?
One of them was an engineering graduate, did a master's, and the other one was more of a design engineering. And they were tasked with the challenge of what can you do to help resolve the problem of plastic? And I think one of them had been at the London Marathon and had found out that at the London Marathon they use over 20,000 bottles of plastic water. And if you've seen the marathon, you know
it's just littered.
Yeah, they drink them and they chuck them by the side of the road. So they collaborated, they came together, they set up a company, and they've come up with an edible water bottle.
What does it taste of?
I don't know. I presume water. And it is called Oohoo. I think it's OOHO. OHO. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but maybe OO, like O from the French.
Oh.
And the membrane is made of seaweed. So it's a seaweed membrane. The water's contained within. So you basically plop the thing into
So
your mouth.
it looks like a bubble.
It looks like a bubble, exactly. And it was first trialled at marathons. They pop them in their mouth. It obviously bursts, and then they can chew and eat the seaweed, which presumably gives them a good source of
Love the sound.
energy.
We will find a photo and we'll stick it on our Instagram stories. That's at Dubai Eye 1038 FM. But I think that's a really good example of that collaboration. We're going to be talking about gender balance next, and also what Antonia looks for when giving away those oh so valuable scholarships. Could your kid have what it takes? We are talking STEM this afternoon with Antonia Giovacci. She is the principal of the National Mathematics and Science College. It's a specialist STEM international sixth form college for gifted and talented students in Coventry in the UK. And she was also the founding vice principal and head of secondary at Heartland International right here in Dubai. We're lucky to have grabbed just an hour with her during her trip. Been in China and now back to the UK. But you're here actually offering some scholarships and speaking to some families, some students.
Yeah.
Can I ask you what you look for when you meet children, meet students that thinks, makes you willing, makes you put some faith in them and say, yes, we are going to give you a scholarship?
So what we're looking for is more than just students who have the knowledge base. It's about looking for young people who have the capacity to think in a different way. Ones who will challenge the accepted norm. Ones who will question maybe at a deeper level and not just accept that whatever they're learning in the book is what they need, for their end exams. It's a little bit about... We were talking earlier about questions for children and not saying what is that and what is it. It's about, well, why do you think that is? Well, how do you think it could be done differently? It's those higher order questions, that higher order way of thinking. And that comes through quite naturally. You can see that fairly quickly when you start to talk to a student. Are they thinking in a deeper, are they questioning? Are they looking around them? Do they have that innate intellectual curiosity to delve deeper and look further?
And what age are you meeting students at now?
Well, we take students from 16. Well, we have a pre-A-level programme, which is 15, but that's more for students who don't have English as their working learning language. So we start to talk to parents really from the age of 14, because I think it's important that if they're looking for a very specialist sixth form education in STEM, that they're planning and they're preparing and they're making sure that they're starting to almost not exercise their brain, but they're starting to delve a little bit into those bigger questions and look a little bit outside the curriculum.
Question here from Sapna and Yahesh saying, our son is 2 years old and loves numbers. At what age can we start STEM?
You can start STEM right away. You can start STEM in the pram, when a baby is rattling a rattle or you're holding the rattle, behind your back. The child's curiosity, find out where that is. They're grabbing, they're using their hands. As I said before, STEM is often most successful when they're very teeny tiny.
It's just continuing them.
It's just about questioning. It's about being curious. That's what it is about.
If you have any questions on the topic of STEM or indeed the future of STEM and how your children could be involved in that, do get in touch 4001 on the SMS, or you can message us for free using the Dubai Eye app. Now, what is the gender split at your college between boys and girls that are studying STEM?
Yeah. Well, it's fairly typical of the gender split in the UK, US and Europe, which is about 70-30. In terms of 70% boys and 30% girls.
Which is interesting because actually a recent news story showed here in the UAE, 8 in 10 learners taking computer science studies are actually female. So very much bucking that global trend. Yeah. Why do you think that is happening outside of the UAE? Why do you think that splits, that favour tends to be with the boys?
I think that traditionally boys have been the ones who have been favouring maths. Girls have traditionally shied slightly away from that, gone for the softer, the literary, the languages, the art subjects. I think it's interesting that in the UAE, it's completely the opposite. And I was thinking about that and wondering why might that be? And one of the reasons might be because there are quite a number of female single-sex schools in the UAE. And I think
that's very interesting.
And I think that girls tend to, in mixed secondaries and the secondaries that I've taught in, boys will push themselves forward because they think they can do the maths or they think they can do the robotics or the science, traditionally. And girls will take a back seat. If they're not really strong and really independent, they will default to the position, well, I'll just let the boys do it. And if that starts at a fairly early age in secondary, by the time they come to their option choices, do they take the hard route? Do they say, oh, I'm going to put myself in the maths and science stream, or do they take what they might perceive as the easier and perhaps in their eyes more enjoyable route? And I think if they're in single-sex schools, perhaps that might be a reason that the girls in many of the schools here have the confidence to be among other young women, to have a voice, to say, I'm going to ask the question, I'm going to take that subject on, and I'm not going to be constrained by what maybe the boys in the class are thinking or saying.
I think confidence is such an interesting choice of words there, because with so many STEM subjects, there is very much a right and a wrong answer. You know, if it's coming down to a maths equation or you know, in a biological sense as well. Whereas, as you say, with a kind of so-called softer, you could be more explanative. You know, it can be you can be talking about the symbolism of something. You can be talking about your perspective of something, and it takes a lot of confidence to put your hand up and give a definitive answer where the teacher could go, "That's not right." Whereas with when it comes to language or it comes to literature, you can explain your point of view, and perhaps girls are better at explaining their point of view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, I think sort of following on from that, one of the things that we're trying to encourage very much in the style of learning is actually, yes, there is a right and a wrong answer in maths, but actually what we're also interested in is you don't always have to get the right answer to be moving forward. And what we try and do with the students is get them to start accepting that sometimes the answer can be wrong, but the route they've got to it might be a really interesting route. As you know, many young people are terrified of failure, you know, especially in the last few years.
Not just young people.
Well, yes, that's true. There's this fear of failure, fear of getting the wrong answer. And we've got to really help our young people to understand that actually it is okay to fail, or it is okay to get it wrong, because it's only by getting it wrong that they'll often get it right. So it's about the process and the journey as much as the final answer.
Let us know, are your girls and boys interested in STEM? Which subjects do you find them leaning towards? 4001 on the SMS or messages for free using that Dubai app. And from the parents that you've got at your college, what are they saying about their hopes for their children? Are they... They're obviously ahead of the curve in a lot of ways by going to a specialist college that really does have its eyes on the future. Why do you think parents are choosing STEM?
Well, I think the first thing is that, you know, I have a huge admiration for the parents who have sent their children to us, because they've taken the risk. And I think the fact that they've taken the risk to send their students to a very specialist college at 16 shows that they understand. And they're also modelling the behaviours that we're looking for in terms of learning and opportunities for the young people. Why have they sent them? Very often it's the students themselves who are self-motivated and very driven. The parents are realising that studying STEM subjects opens up a world of opportunities. You know, I touched on the journalism, the architecture, but also in the world of arts and entertainment, in the world of music.
And also in jobs that have not been invented yet.
Jobs that have not been invented. And we're always being told, and we're always reading about, in 20 years, there will be jobs we haven't even thought of. So we need people with the skills to be agile enough and flexible enough and to be able to pick up skills really quickly. That's why it's more about the skills than just the knowledge base.
Joined by Antonia Giovanacci. She is the principal at the National Mathematics and Science College, the specialist STEM international sixth form college in Coventry, UK, for gifted and talented students. Does that mean that they still have fun, right?
Oh, absolutely, they have fun. Okay. They have sport, they have theatre, they have music, they have a choir. We have a college choir. We have lots of fun. We put the A into STEM, you see. Make it STEAM.
But that's the thing. You are a musician yourself, of course, performed at Edinburgh Fringe. So it's great that you're coming with that balance. I've had a message here from Ali in JBR saying, my friend from Jumeirah College goes to Antonia's college. Oh. He knew he wanted to be a cancer doctor from age 13. Do you know who she's talking about?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to name him on air. He won't mind. It's Pierre, and he came to us from Jumeirah College, actually, here in Dubai. Pierre is an incredible young man, very focused, has lots of fun, so he's not deadly serious. He came to us, and when I interviewed him, that's what he said to me. I said, what are your aspirations? What are you looking to do? He said, I want to be an oncologist. And I think it's the first time in 25 years I've ever actually interviewed a student who was so focused and told me he wanted to be not a doctor but an oncologist. And Pierre's a really interesting young man, because this in the autumn he signed himself up to attend a brain tumour conference in London. Came into my office, asked me if he could have leave of absence. I said, absolutely. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to the brain tumour conference. At the conference, this conference was attended by working surgeons, medics. I think he was the only school or college student, under 18, who had voluntarily signed up to this conference.
They must have thought it was like Bring Your Kid to Work Day.
Well, I mean, he does look quite mature. But the fact that he has that self-motivation, we helped him to get a NHS placement for 2 weeks, which of course, the placements are pivotal to medics. And that's one of the challenges with all medical applicants. How do they actually manage to get that experience to make them stand out? Because of course, all these students have A stars. How do the universities select them? They select them by interview. He's actually applying to Cambridge. They have to have something to stand out. They've got to have that medical work experience.
If you've got any questions, it's your last chance to get them in for Antonia on the topic of STEM. But what does that look like on a typical day at your college? We've talked about the big picture of why the future really is STEM from your point of view, and I think many obviously agree with that. But on the classroom, what does a day look like?
Well, let's take an example of maths lessons in the college. So because we're set up and we like to think of ourselves as a pathway and a bridge to higher education, we have maths lessons every day. So the first maths lesson of the week we do as a seminar style lesson. So all the maths department will be teaching the students in a lecture style forum.
That's a really that's huge actually, because that means when you do go to university, it's not such a foreign environment. You feel comfortable and confident from the outset.
And I think that's one of the responsibilities of preparing students in the sixth form for learning at university, where they have to learn independently. So they have this forum, so they'll have a seminar, the different teachers will contribute, the students will take notes. That's all about the knowledge, they're learning the new aspects of maths. Then for the ensuing lessons in the week, they have small group lessons where the teachers are giving maybe 2 or 3 people a different mathematical problem, and they say to them, okay, you've had the knowledge on Monday. For the rest of the next 2 days, take that problem, go away, work at it. So I find students who are lying on their backs in reception, writing on a glass wall.
Like literally. A beautiful mind.
Yes, I mean, it's literally like that. Or, one is lying on a beanbag, or 3 of them are hovered around a pillar, writing on the pillar, sticking things on the ceiling. And it all looks a bit mad, but obviously it's very entertaining from my office. And then what they do at the last 20 minutes of the lesson, the teacher will bring them back and he'll say, right, present. And these students, many of whom English is not a first language, have to get up there and they have to collaborate in the problem solving, but also in the presentation. The other students then are challenging them, saying, well, I don't know how you got that, because I would have done it slightly differently. And, it's just a wonderful opportunity to develop their skill in being able to challenge, to ask questions. And again, it's all about the confidence to do that.
And also the confidence to go away and teach yourself a bit of independent learning, which is amazing for university. Antonia, where can people find you and your college?
Well, you can find us at our website, which is www.natmatsci, which is natmatsci.ac.uk. We're also on Twitter and we're also on Instagram, so we're quite social media savvy now.
You should be being all about the technology. Antonia, thank you so much for joining
lovely to
us.
be here. Thank you for having me.